What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and this one I want to break down what's going on with the overall market and talk about some very critical support levels on Tesla, SPY, Nvda, and the QQQ. I'm also going to break down what's going on with the different pieces of news affecting the markets, some economic data that just came out, what you should be watching for in the pre-markets. But before I bring these all this information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. Firstly, I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100 into the account, you are guaranteed up to 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed up to 15 free stocks, and this offer ends in just a couple of weeks. Anyways, now let's break down what's going on with the market. Right now on SPY, the 30 minutes actually looking a little bearish as we're starting to sell off. Same thing on the 5 minutes and the 4-hour time frame starting to curl. But SPY is approaching some critical supports very close to this 471 area at the 200 EMA. So we'll have to see if this support holds. If we hold this, there is going to be an attempt to bounce to fill this gap. If we fail and we end up breaking below this, I anticipate a bigger sell-off that's coming. And this move would end up failing because of all this data that's coming out. So what's going on with the data? We just had the exports and imports coming out. Basically, the deficit is about $63 billion, which is actually not as bad as before. But there's more data the market's going to react to. So we had the exports and imports data come out. Not the best. The market is actually still selling off because of this deficit. Even though the deficit did decrease a bit relative to the previous month, we're still going to be watching to see what happens with this, especially moving forward. This does suggest that there could be an increase in the GDP, possibly because the deficit is narrowed by 2%. But once again, overall, the data is still not necessarily enough to really get the market to balance. The market still is reacting negatively to this. Now, on top of all of this, I just want to mention that what's coming next is going to be the economic optimism report at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll see what this causes for the markets. Then we have the 3-year notes auction. If the economic optimism report is strong, we'll see if this helps the market bounce. And then if it fails to do so, the market could just continue to sink. So we'll be watching this very carefully to see if this helps out. On top of all of this, I just want to mention that this is making lots of headlines right now, our overall international trade deficits. Once again, it's below what the estimate was, which technically could help the markets, but so far it hasn't. So for now, that's pretty much all that's affecting us for now. A couple of things to know about the market is that the market has rebounded quite a bit. It is starting to give back some of those gains, and then we're going to be watching to see if support holds, especially after the move Nvda made. As far as Boeing goes, I just want to mention that Boeing fell 8% on Monday after a panel blew out of Alaskan Airlines. This has led many of their basically lots of these planes to basically come in for calls for inspections. That was some negative news that came out. Many of their 737 MAX planes are once again going back for inspections. Kind of negative news that came out. There's also some new things coming out right here. The New York Times has sued ChatGPT maker OpenAI for copyright infringement. Some news worth noting. That's it for the time being when it comes to major headlines. And last but not least, Shein is basically an e-commerce company with roots in China. Has come under a great deal of scrutiny over environmental and forced labor concerns. So that is not great news for them. Once again, that's just what's making a lot of headlines right now. But I just want as many people to be as safe as possible regardless of that. So that's it for the main pieces of news. Now let's break down these charts. How are things looking? Right now, SPY is holding support at 472. We have retraced by about 2 points. But the question is, do we get one more bounce, try to push up, or are we about to see a big switch in the markets, right? We want to be open-minded just to be safe with all this data coming out. Now, what is tricky is the fact that the overall candlestick was kind of bullish on SPY. It was getting lots of strong volume. And the 0.618 retracement happens to be at 469.5, so very close to 470. I think that's going to be another key support. If we, if we continue to retrace, we're going to be watching 471. I find that to be one of the most important supports. That's going to be where our 30 minutes 200 EMA happens to be. If we lose that, we're going to be watching the 0.618 retracement area. It's about 470. So 469.5 to 470 is next. We'll see if we hold that. If we lose that, we turn back to bearish. That's where this breakout happened. If we lose that support, SPY is going to turn back to bearish. If we hold this area, if we continue to hold, we hold above 470, there's going to be some hope for the bulls. So we're going to be watching these levels very carefully. Watch resistance at 472.9, 474, and then 476. Watch support at 472. If we lose this, we have 471.6 technically, 470, and then 468. So as this is basically downtrending right here, right? We're going to be looking for something else that's very important. Watch the 472s very, very carefully to see how they hold. But with that being said, guys, this is looking a little weak. We are starting to sell off a bit, so I do think we're going to end up testing some of these EMAs. And we're going to be watching to see if we could hold 471 or not. That's going to be very, very key for today, especially when all data comes out. If we lose it, our last point of hope is going to be around the 470 range, 471 and 470. If that fails us, we're going to be looking for the market to reverse and come right back down. If it holds it, we could attempt to bounce, but we'll just have to wait and see during that big test. Now, Tesla's coming down a bit, but we're still holding support right over here around this 238 area. We're still in 238. If we lose 238 flats, there could be a risk of this coming down to 236. If we hold 238, we could see Tesla bounce back to 240. Watch 240's resistance, 242 and 244, 238 and then 236 as support. As far as Tesla goes, looking at the 30 minutes time frame, we're kind of flat right now. But if you look at the 4-hour time frame, if you just look at this, we have this resistance that's still developing. Tesla is selling off just a little bit, but we're just barely holding the support, so we're kind of choppy right here. So we'll see if this is actually developing. And we're sending shoulders on Tesla. Does Tesla have a left shoulder here ahead and a right shoulder forming? Or is Tesla about to try to bounce and start pushing up if we break this resistance? So in my opinion, it might hold up for the time being, but if we lose 238, there's going to be a risk of it selling off. So as of right now, it's kind of range bound, might actually pop when we open, just continue to range trade a bit before we see a big move. If we lose 238, we could see this move start to fail and Tesla could come down to the 236s. If it continues to chop a bit and we end up breaking and holding 240, there's going to be more upside potential. We have to hold 240 to turn bullish. So watch those levels very, very carefully. As far as the QQQ goes, in my opinion, for the QQQ, we saw this thing push up. It almost reached our target of about 406. Now it's coming back down to about this 401.6 area. We're going to be watching this very carefully at supports very close to. First off, we have the 20 EMA coming at 400, and then below that we have these other supports. On the 30 minutes time frame, where it's once again 401. So we have 401, then 400 as two supports. That's where our EMAs happen to be. Watch this 401 zone, then 400. If we lose 400, watch the breakout area. I think right here is going to be very key, this 399 area. We'll see if it holds this or not. If it loses this breakout area, it's going to be sinking back down towards 396. If it bounces off of this, it can push back up to 402 plus and start holding up. So watch that critical support very carefully, all the way back down to 400 to 399. If we bounce off this 399 to 400 range, we could try to push back up. If we lose supports around that 400 to 399, we're going to start sinking back down much lower. So watch that very carefully on the QQQ. We are selling off a bit, but watch and see how the economic optimism report affects us. For Nvda, I made a very, very nice move. We're still holding up and kind of shopping around 525. It's still very, very choppy. We're going to be watching to see if this thing can try to break this resistance right here. So we have this resistance zone right here that's developing at 528. Watch 525 as resistance. If it breaks this, watch 528, 530, and then even 532. If we start to fail right here, watch 520 as a support. And also we have this 517 range, followed by 515, 512, and 508. In my opinion, it might actually chop for a bit. It might just remain range bound. It might push when we open, then remain range bound. So we'll just have to wait and see. But it is getting very close to a target of 530. It's actually not that far from it. It did come close to 528, so it's not that far off. And we'll just see it range bound for now and see which way it breaks. As far as Aapl goes, Aapl is starting to sell off a bit. The question is, could Aapl be forming an inverse head and shoulders, or is Aapl going to sell off more? This is going to depend on what Aapl does at the EMAs. On the 30 minutes time frame, we're barely holding the 5 EMA. On the 4-hour, I like to use those time frames a lot, kind of rejecting off the 50 EMA. Going to be watching the support right here on Aapl very close to 183.5. If we lose 183.5, it's going to be coming back down towards 182.75. That's where this breakout area was. And if that fails us, we turn back into this range. We're going to go back to being range bound between 180 and 182. If we bounce off 183, right, we're going to be looking for a pushback up to 185 plus in these higher levels. So for now, I'm going to be watching, can Aapl hold support and form like a cup and handle, or is Aapl going to end up failing? If it loses 183, we could turn bearish. If we bounce off 183.5 or so, we could see this thing push back up to 185. So watch that as a critical level. We will see if it holds or not. So make sure you watch these levels, guys. Thank you all so much for listening. Markets were tracing a bit after the exports and imports data came out. But we'll see if the buyers tries to defend or not. So we're not necessarily dead just yet. Watch the support levels I called out very carefully, and we'll see how it goes. Thank you for listening, guys. Have a great day, and peace out.